Welcome back to Simple Truth. In fairness, I've been hyper all week, so if I talk really fast, maybe you can just slow it down a little bit if your computer's capable of doing that. Excited about the story of Joseph. We're getting to the good part. I've said that I think every single time, right? Every part of this story of Joseph is so practical in nature if you really look at it for that. So when we get into chapter 42, what I'm excited about is we're going to start seeing God manipulate things even more, right? To fulfill that which he said was going to happen, right? So a while earlier, God promised Abraham a whole bunch of things, right? So I want to take you back there because I think it's important, because now we're going to start seeing specifics, and you need to understand that some of this stuff is happening not out of want, out of God moving people, right? And it's important for you to understand that God says, hey, I need to get my plan into action, right? So it's important that we're looking to see, sometimes God makes it so that we don't really have a choice, right? So in chapter 15 of Genesis, look at verse 12. It says this: as the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram. Behold, dreadful great darkness fell upon him. And then the Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants in their nation that they serve. And afterwards, they shall come out with great possessions. They'll be there 400 years, right? 400 years. So we look at God's promise to Abraham. Hey, your family, your people, right? They're going to be in a nation, in a land that they don't want to be in. They're going to be servants. They're going to serve. And after 400 years, I'm going to bring them out with great possession to the land that you're living in now, right? So God said, here's how it's going to work. No, for God to be God, he has to actually make this happen. He has to allow for this to happen, but then it also has to happen, right? It's this really tricky thing. And God has to walk this line with free will. He has to give you the choice to say no, while at the same time fulfill his promises, right? That's a crazy line to walk, right? Imagine if you walked into your workplace, right? And they said to you, hey, we've got to get 400 of these things made by Friday, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to. We've committed to 400 things. We've committed to it being done. Wouldn't it just be easier to say, hey, everybody, we got to get this done. Let's get it done this week, right? God says, hey, listen, I want you to be part of my plan. I'm asking you to be part of my plan, but I'm not going to make you be part of the plan, right? And that's important, giving us opportunity, right? So when we pick up in verse 1 of chapter 42, it says, when Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, why do you look to one another? And he said, behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came for the famine was in the land of Canaan. So we understand God's about multiple things here, right? The very first thing he's about is somehow getting Jacob, Abraham's descendants, right? Abraham's great grandson, to where he needs to be, which is Egypt, so that God's promise can be filled. So there's part of that, right? Then the other part of it is that God's all about restoration, right? You got these brothers and a dad who have been living for all of these years with the assumption that their brother is dead, right? Or at least gone. The brothers have no idea what happened with him other than they sold him. They don't know. They don't have a clue. And Jacob thinks that his son, whom he was well pleased with, right, is dead. And so God, seemingly in his plan, is going to tie up all these edges, right? But he's also got to go back and make Joseph's dream come true. Joseph's dream was that his father and brothers, his mother, father, and brothers would all bow down to him. So you see how God gave Joseph this, God gave Abraham this, and God has said all these things, and now he's got to make it all happen. Do you know that God has to do that in your life as well, and in my life? He's made promises to you, promises to somebody else. He's got to intertwine it all, make it all happen, give us a chance, right, to be a part of what it is that he wants for us. It's mind-blowing, right, to me. Mind-blowing that God's got to work all of this out. Ultimately, the number one thing here is that Jacob and his family, they've got to get to Egypt, right? They've got to be a people in a land that's not theirs, where they're going to serve, where they're going to come out with great possessions to get back that which, by the way, they already had. Right? That is a great lesson. Sometimes you have to be willing to give up what you already have to get it back again with greater possession. Right? Abraham, his sons, they're living where they're supposed to be living. Right? But then all of a sudden God says to them, no, that's not going to happen. Then Jacob's living there. Isaac's living there. Right? They're in the place where they're supposed to be. But then God says, no, I want you to inhabit this, but I also want you to possess it. Sometimes we're just inhabiting a moment. We're just living in a moment. God says, I want you to possess this moment. I want you to embrace this moment. I want you to fully be able to enjoy this moment, not just live there, right? Not just be a part of it. I want you to be it, right? That is important. Whatever God has you right now, is he want you to just inhabit? Are you staying for a little while? Hey, just live here. He told the exiles that you're going to be here for 70 years. Plant yourself. You're going to be here. I want you to inhabit this place. But he never told them to possess it. He never told them, hey, this is your new land. This is where you're going to be. This is what I have for you. No, you're going to inhabit it for 70 years, and then you're coming back. Then I'm going to bring back a remnant. Then I'm going to keep doing that which I've wanted to do. Right? So it's important for us to understand there are times when we're just inhabiting a moment with God. You just have live here for a second. Because I'm going to bring you into possession of that which I have promised you. Don't forget the promises that God has given you. Don't let go of them and just settle and inhabit a moment that, that God says, live here for a second, but get ready to possess the bigger picture. So we challenge you with that today. We challenge you to look at your life. What has God promised you? And are you looking for God to move the parts, move the things so that he can fulfill his promise? Or are you just settling and just inhabiting, right? Jacob heard about the grain in Egypt. That's the thing that enticed him. Ever been there where God entices you with a little thing? You heard about something and all of a sudden you checked it out and it changed your life, right? The hook for Jacob is, hey, there's grain in Egypt. So what's the famine about in Egypt? What's the famine about in the world? Is it possible that God did a worldwide famine, at least a big area-wide famine, right? Just so he could fulfill his promise to Abraham. Just so that Jacob and his family, right, 50 people in nature, is what the Bible tells us, would move to Egypt. Remember, without the famine, Jacob's not going to Egypt. Without Jacob going to Egypt, God's promises are in danger of not being fulfilled. So take a look at your life. What is God hooking you with to move you, right, to where he has you? Do you look at your life right now and you're kind of looking back and going, how did this happen? How did I end up here? How did we get here? Right? What did God use to move you from one place to the next? Right? And are you looking for permanency and God's saying, no, just inhabit this moment for a minute because your permanency is over here. This is what I have for you, right? So take a good look today, right? What is it that God's doing in your life to fulfill the promises that he's made for you? Hey, we'll continue on next time. Simple Truth.